Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about F9, The Fast Saga. F9 is the ninth film in the proper Fast and Furious franchise, not counting the entry that I refused to invite to Thanksgiving, Hobbs and Shaw. It's also the return of probably one of the big series architects, Justin Lin, who has now directed more Fast and Furious movies than there have actually been directors who are not Justin Lin directing Fast and Furious movies. He's directed 5. There have been 4 not directed by him, which are only directed by people who direct one movie. And although Fate of the Furious and the whatever the 7th one was are very much indebted to him and his style, which is the uber ridiculousness and having a lot of fun with it, this one I think is one of my more favorite versions of Justin Lin that aren't kind of his creative peak, which I think most people consider 5 and 6. This to me is like him. What is great about the Fast and Furious series is that it's absolutely ridiculous, it's silly, it's beyond belief, but it's compelling and fun to watch in a way that just doesn't make it just a simple kind of, having a cold beer and just like nodding off kind of film. You get into it, you care about the drama, even if you're ironic about it, you still think it's fun to watch and everything like that. It's like a solid, good entry in the franchise, but it also reminds you of why Justin Lin took over the franchise and made it into the billion-dollar thing it was. Before he came in with Tokyo Drift, it was just like, how did this thing get like a sequel? That's weird. And now it's become like, the biggest worldwide franchise or something. So Dom is brought back because he finds out there's an evil plot set up by his brother, played by John Cena, who I thought should have played the Invisible Man, but, he's busy. That's the only wrestling joke I know, and I'm not sure I did it right. John Cena plays his brother, despite them, whatever. But plays his brother who's trying to help this evil plot to set up this whole thing to start a whole new world order, or basically put them in charge because he's friends with some rich guy or something. I don't know. Doesn't really matter, but Dom has to stop his brother from taking over the world, and he has his usual crew of, Ludacris, Tyrese, Michelle Rodriguez, Jordana Brewster, because why not? And Han is back because it's a Justin Lin movie. I really think the rules with Han are just like, is Justin Lin involved? Then Han's there. If Justin Lin isn't, then Han isn't, basically. Because that is literally what has happened. I know justice for Han, but more like just pay Justin Lin to make Fast and Furious movies. We don't really need those other people as much. Like realistically, I'm not trying to be an auteurist, and I know I put him in my video literally about auteur theory, but like, let's be real. There's Justin Lin, there's everyone else, and you can tell that throughout this film. He's fucking great in this. They're like, immediately when they're in some foreign country and they see a plane that's been crashed and has they get part of it, and there's like, they're trying to find information, all this stuff, and then suddenly there's landmines there, and suddenly they're swinging, like, he has a rope that swings the car from one cliff to another. They're driving through a bridge that falls apart as they're driving on it, and somehow they get off of it. None of it makes any sense, and they even have a meta conversation, Tyrese and Ludacris, throughout the film about how they are invincible because he gets shot up by like 16 guys and he doesn't die and doesn't have a scratch on him. But although Justin Lin is very much the architect of what became the Fast and Furious films, another one is Chris Morgan, who worked with him on his first 4 films, which were Tokyo Drift, the 4th one, Fast 5, and Fast Furious, or Furious 6 or whatever. And Chris Morgan actually has written all the 7 Fate of the Furious and Hobbs and Shaw, but he didn't write this one. I would say it's a little weaker. I think he's a little better at doing that. Maybe Chris Morgan, Justin Lin, I don't know, maybe Chris Morgan didn't want to do this. Maybe Justin Lin wanted to write his own. But it's interesting, the guy who put the franchise into the whole idea of Fast 5, which was ridiculously entertaining and silly in itself, and then the runway that goes on forever, decides to have the 2 characters talk about how they are unstoppable, is like, fits like so perfectly. Like, I like this kind of Fast and Furious. I do feel like this kind of critical love for blockbusters that we've had recently has been a bit like a very post-COVID sort of thing, and I do think it's probably going to wear off soon. But Fast and Furious have always been this thing I've always really liked and always really enjoyed seeing, and they're always really wonderful. And I think if we're going to bring back blockbusters and movie theaters and stuff, which I may or may not have seen this in the movie theater, I think what Justin Lin gets about them is he gets having fun with it, because as silly as these plots are, and as it's going to destroy the world and he's going to rip his crew apart, or like Dom will be evil and Charlize Theron's back, they are sort of like Avengers movies, they are sort of like Ocean's 11 movies, they are sort of like, I don't know how we got here and none of this makes sense, but isn't it kind of cool? And that's sort of like what this sort of thing is. It doesn't make sense that this is where it is. They actually do go to space this time. Like what else is left? Like, this is a franchise that started out being about a movie about a street gang that stole DVD players, and this franchise has outlasted DVD as a medium. It is silly and stupid, but I think what I like about the Justin Lin when he's taken on this film is he seems to embrace it, and everyone else is not as... I think the difference between Justin Lin and James Wan and F. Gary Gray is they will have funny, ridiculous set pieces, which obviously Chris Morgan set up for them, if you know his writing in this. But I think what Justin Lin's direction shows you is it's not so much about having like, oh, we'll have this missile and a submarine and turn, although that was a good sequence. What Justin Lin gets is you don't just have the runway that goes on forever. You have a ton of fights. You have Gal Gadot fall into nothingness or something. Why doesn't she better come back? Like, I know she's Wonder Woman, but like, she just like fell into nothingness. Like, that's just like, that's not a joke, by the way. It's just like there was so much going on in that sequence, and it's almost like the baseline is the ridiculousness, and he jumps off of that, and everyone else I think goes like, well, let's have a car drive through these high buildings. He would have a missile jet plane going at the same time. Like, nothing about what Justin Lin does makes any sort of a semblance of sense that I should really like this, but he's really good at filming it. Like, he's like if Michael Bay or any of these people actually liked the audience and was concerned with entertaining them as much as he was concerned with making himself laugh in the editing bay. And I think that's one of the reasons these films, like, you can tell that when a director's having fun, and like maybe he's become like a little more corporate with it or whatever. I mean, these are always been corporate movies, and like I feel like everyone he's ever made is supposed to be the last one. It sings in a certain way. There's certain weaknesses, like I do think Chris Morgan should have written it. I don't think John Cena is good at being like super serious. I think he is more of a funny kind of like villain type role, and I was like, I would have liked him be sort of a role like The Rock. I do think The Rock was like, of the entries, 7 he wasn't in as much. I did sort of miss him in that one, but in this one, despite him having his own franchise with Hobbs and Shaw, I also kind of felt like it was like too much going on as it was, so like putting him in it would have probably been a bad idea, so I'm sort of okay with it. Even though I do think The Rock like really brightens up these films, as well as like I like the Cardi B cameo. The Helen Mirren was great. She should be in this more. Overall, this isn't the high point. Like, we've never seen 5 or 6. Those are the two. Or I know people love Tokyo Drift. I like sequences in it. I don't like the whole thing as much. But this was like another kind of stellar entry into the franchise. I don't know if I've really been that down on the more recent ones, but this feels like kind of closer to the rewatchability. Like, I've watched 5 the most. I watched 6 a few times. 7 and 8 I'm not as down with, to be honest with you. I kind of see them and then have fun with them. Although Vin Diesel in the kind of body armor thing on top of a bunch of cars like he's a knight, that was insane. Like, everyone talks about the missile sub, but like that was really out of some like weird B-movie exploitation kind of thing. Like, that was insane. I could see myself rewatching this again. It had a lot of fun. It felt like everyone was just down to make a dumb, silly movie. Vin Diesel's like probably his best role is Dom, because it's like almost his most endearing of anything he does. Like, I also, like, to be honest, like, I have no interest. I didn't see Sport, whatever, and I didn't see the one where he's this Dungeons and Dragons guy. Like, none of that really interests me. It was nice seeing Michael Rooker. I like the little Guardians of the Galaxy reunion there. Ultimately, I do think this is just another really good entry in the Fast and Furious. I'm curious to see where it goes after this. It is weird that Paul Walker is alive in this universe. That's very strange, and they're not great at dealing with it. It's become super awkward as all hell in this entry. Like, I really wish they would have dealt with this better. Please do not have him show up in 10. or 10 Part 2. I think these are kind of like sort of James Bond movies or something at this point, where you're just like, well, you kind of almost have a good time at any supposed entry. But I will say about this franchise, and probably similar to the Mission Impossible franchise at this point, most of the entries are solid, good action films. Like, they're fun, big blockbusters. You have a good time. You see cars race around. You see Vin Diesel do something crazy. You see Tyrese and Ludacris have fun together. There's giant magnets for no reason. All sorts of craziness goes on. It's like, there's the magnet thing got a little old. Like, they definitely had fun with it. The magnet sequence sort of reminded me a bit of the Fast Five sequence with the safe. But as much as it's throwing out all these bells and whistles, I still think like we're almost like too far at this point. Like, I kind of think it needs to stop, because eventually the Fast and Furious franchise will have to consume all time and space and reality just to like if we just let this go, I think maybe the governments of this world should just be like, Vin, you have to stop, because the time space continuum will collapse as the only way to keep expanding these things, which is like sort of a joke, but not. I do think as it's gone on, it's gotten like, I wish they would just come up with more inventive ways rather than just like space super magnets and stuff, because some of the most enduring things was like the hacker girl who didn't know how to drive, who's part of their crew. Like, that's fun. Like, like everyone remembers that part. Or like, the landmine sequence, like adding on to it. Like, it's fun seeing Charlize again, even though they always have weird hairstyles. I like that this franchise hates rich people. Kurt Russell should have more to do. I don't know if there's any more to say. This is a worthy entry in the Fast Saga, as it were. It's a fun one. I think this has just turned out to be a fairly solid franchise of ridiculous cars doing very silly things that they never should have really done. This is probably the greatest example of Hollywood pushing a franchise way further than it ever should have been, but somehow it's really good. Like, how did this become better than, if someone told me in 2002 or whatever that the Fast and Furious franchise was going to be better than a live action Transformers franchise, I would have been very upset. But that's the world I live in, man. Maybe that's like a metaphor for adult life, or maybe it's just 2021. I had a lot of fun with F9. I have a lot of fun with Justin Lin directing this film, and I think he really brought everything back together in a really cohesive, wonderful way. And it reminds me just kind of why I like this franchise so much. I think if another director had come in, we probably would have not been as enthusiastic. He was like, we let two other people mess around so Justin Lin could make like a Star Trek movie, and now he's back in his full glory. But I'm excited to see what he will do with an even bigger cast, having almost more cameos. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this was kind of a Justin Lin, like a celebration of the Justin Lin movies. He has like the Tokyo Drift characters come back. He has like characters from Fast Five, everyone but Gal Gadot showed up in this movie, and I really appreciated that. So he should kind of have his victory lap, because he was probably able to accomplish one of the most fun blockbuster franchises in recent memory, and I don't know how he did it sometimes, but I have a lot of fun watching it. So if you've seen F9 and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.